we do a little popcorn. I don't know why popcorn, but just staccato industry trends, quick thoughts, right? Because we can probably have many, many thoughts. I've got 4 trends here that I'm just curious about. The first one is AI. Let's get into the AI. So industry trends. How do you think the trend and just absolute existence of AI is going to affect each of your worlds? But I mean, Nick, I think we've chatted about this a little bit. AI not super harmful for online deck supporting, but how do you feel about it? What do you think?
Honestly, it's funny because everyone has such strong opinions about it. Hurters, certain artists get freaked out because, there's certain old school industry people before the tarot industry grew that they've been around a while and they obviously crafted all their own art. And now it's got simpler to make stuff, but it's got incredibly simpler to make stuff with AI, and people kind of devalue that. I honestly sit in the middle and I see the benefits of both. You can generally tell, but I don't think you can always tell the difference between a project that is and isn't. And it's, as I mentioned before, Picasso, your deck needs to have a look. If it has a look that looks like it's AI, that's not going to help you. It's an accelerator to remove blockages. The way I have incredibly creative mind. I use ChatGPT a lot to write down my thoughts. I prime GPT to tell it, I give it all this background, and then it writes back stuff to me. It writes better than I can write. Is it GPT that's writing or me? I'm just learning to ride that horse. I'm feeding it everything it needs to create better stuff. Artistically, it's a lot harder, I think. I have admiration for people I see doing stuff in AI because it's a lot harder in AI to create a collection of images that are incredibly creative and have a theme, that they look consistent. There's a talent to that, right? But the problem with, if you have AI resistance, your AI resistance should be highly selective. If you're an artist, I can understand your resistance, but you should be using other parts of AI that's not, like, what are your strengths and weaknesses? You should be using AI to fill in the gaps that you have, right? And honestly, it's changing so damn fast. The tools, the evolution, the creation of content, the marketing, the transcription of video. Oh my God, this is just like, it's hard to stay up and stay on top of it and not have FOMO and feel deficient and you're behind, right? But I think if you have a negative view of it, it's going to have a negative impact on you. You need to find out how to love it, because it's not going back in the box. Sorry, anyone that thinks it's going back in the box and you can look the other way, I'm not going to use art. I fully stand by the art piece of, I can see 100% the value of having genuine artist created content. Fantastic. But you should be using AI in every other different, for social media creation, video editing, copywriting, What I love about AI, get this one, it never gets tired. It never argues. You can say, no, give me another 10. No, give me another, and it just does it, right? So use it as a slave. Use it as an extension. Imagine I can give you a spade and you go dig a hole, or I can give you $100,000 digger, right? You're going to make more impact in the world with a $100,000 digger. Now, you still need to do precision stuff, right? But it's just the metaphor. If you want to ignore it, you can ignore it. But recognize that the person who's trying to compete with you is probably using it in one way or another. And the person who thrives on it and is super powered and supercharged by it is going to dominate. It's just inevitable, right? So you have to come to peace with your own, where you sit with it, but at least look at it and see what it brings. And even it, don't have it stand on your own discipline. If you're an artist, I can understand that. But there are other places where you should be and could be using it. Yeah. It's my little rant.
Great invitation. I love it. Hey, I knew that AI would be the worst one to start a popcorn round with, but here I am. There really just is so much to say, because so much also we are not sure how it's going to go. Right. And we're navigating, I think it's like such a sweet, just a side note, I think it's a sweet, human, kind of humbling thing that we're all a little bit like, well, trying to figure out how we choose on an individual level to interact with this expansive world just as much as we would in the spiritual. It's like this non-ordinary, vast array of possibilities. So
it impacts this domain more than any other domain, in my opinion, right? Because there are lots of people in the business domain who are just using it for text generation, and there's arguments about that, right? But here we can wholly create a product with text, images, audio, video. What does that mean? It ends up being a bit soulless if it's 100% that way. But should someone be denied from because they can't draw? I don't know. I just get so.
It's so fascinating, and there have to be energetics behind it. There has to be soul behind it, because
Right.
when you're doing that thing that you were talking about, Nick, with the hand going over, and we're trying to select. Well, no, who was Stephen Farmer? It was Dr. Stephen Farmer. This is last night. What a blur. Dr. Stephen Farmer. I was like, wait a sec. My wires crossed here. Dr. Stephen Farmer yesterday was talking about you take your receptive hand and you go over decks and you just feel which one calls out to you. We don't have a rhyme or reason for that. That wasn't, I looked at that and thought, oh, that just is a standard good one to have. It's just that was the feeling behind it. And so I imagine that there's also this feeling, as people use Deckable, that they feel drawn to a certain kind of, and that will always be the case. That is something that you can't change. So Crystal, I'm so curious where you sit with this AI work, because you're working with more of this, the artful crafting. So this would be the side of the people who are more against AI. And so fact that it would help them as far as the creative part of it goes. But I agree, there's sort of all this, you can use it for your marketing as well and in other ways to offload. So what do you think? Where are you at with this trend?
I don't think anyone in the industry is saying you should not utilize AI at any point in your creative marketing process or in any way, shape, or form. The reality is, even me as the publisher, if I need to get their business email, I'm going to plug that in with a couple of key points that I want. It's because an email, I'm going to read it over, I'm going to rewrite it in my own words a little bit, and then I'm going to use it that way. And I think that's a reality that everyone does, right? But I'm also not directly printing that business email and monetizing on it for the rest of my life. So I think that there is a question that gets raised there as far as when you're producing something as a product and monetizing it, whether the use of AI is okay. And is there any level of AI use that is okay, right? Is there a point where this becomes a gray zone, or is this just going to be a hard no? We did a lot of community testing on this because this is something we were curious to know, and the community was largely against the idea of using it. They were very against the idea of fully AI generated art or fully AI generated text. They got a little bit more gray zone when it came to help with the art or the text, and it gets very fuzzy when you're a legitimate digital artist who's going to use AI for 10% of your process to add a pattern into the background or something because it's just going to be faster than hand drawing that paisley. That gets a little bit weird. And there's some people who just say, no, that's like an ethical no-no. It steals from artists. Like, that is never okay. But I do acknowledge when you get into those nuanced details, it's at least a point where we should be having the conversation. Backing up for a second, though, some of the AI art that we've received has been really easy to say no to because the quality is just not good. So I received a deck where it was a legitimate angel inspirational deck, and poor Mikael has a sword that went into his thigh accidentally and came out at a different angle on the other side. That was not intentional. No one wants that kind of nightmare fuel in their decks, guys. So we're going to put out AI through someone else. At least please look through your work and make sure you don't have any nightmarish images that took place because he didn't even bother looking at them. That was a little insulting to receive, honestly. Like, you didn't even look at your work before you turned it in. Same thing if I see a manuscript which is obviously AI generated. So right now, look, if people want to be able to use that for their marketing material, putting together an email, whatever, fine. We understand that that's just the normal creation process at this point. We have opted not to put any AI decks forward, and we have received some ones that looked good, right? And we know that this is going to keep getting trickier because the AI is going to keep getting better and the art's going to keep improving. So eventually, I'm not going to have that argument on, well, you had 6 fingers in every other hand, so sorry. We recognize it's going to get a little bit trickier, but the reality is we don't really even know the legality of being able to put out something that is AI produced. So it's still a very fuzzy world. It's very fuzzy in publishing world right now. Because we know that a lot of people have been really against it, that's been another good reason for us not to act on it yet, because I'm not sure the majority of the customers are really ready for it yet, nor are we ready for those pitchforks. But I recognize that in 5 years, it may be a completely different thing. When Photoshop came out, everyone freaked out because it was going to interrupt analog artists. So in the same respect, we're trying to keep an open mind that things may just change in the future, and it may become inevitably that it just becomes integrated in some way, shape, or form. But I have to say, as someone who's very much into the magical and energetic side of this, I personally think that decks that have gone through some kind of a creation process of someone really sitting there and working through it again and again, and especially when there's an analog process and you're really putting pen or paint to paper, there's an elemental aspect, there's a physical aspect that is creating an energetic imprint of what that card is, which is going to make it work better for you. So I am of the mindset that analog decks, or at least decks that have really had a lot of that time and experience, that heart, that symbolism really carefully put into them, as only a human creator can do, I think do have a special something that AI decks just cannot quite reproduce.
Absolutely. All very important. Thank you for, sorry for the dog interruption, but I'm pet sitting. It's a long day and she wanted to sit on my lap. And so you can't say no. It's so sweet. I know it.
Mine's so fascinated by our talk.
Oh my gosh, real alert. Thanks. Thanks for tuning in. That's great. I love that. Anna, any comments about AI? Thank you for that as well, Crystal and Nick. Thank you.
I feel like so much has already been said, so I don't want to repeat too much of what everyone has already contributed to this conversation. But one thing I just want to say is I know there was a lot of discussion about it going into the ideological views or what's ethical and what isn't. And I feel there's some gray areas there. But one thing I always like to say is I really see AI as an extension of human consciousness. So whatever we put in it is what comes back out. It's really a reflection or a mirror. I do agree that most AI art at this point, especially created by people who don't have an artistic background and typically don't have that eye for the details, it's just the quality of it is just not matching what I look for. I'm a massive perfectionist, so I really see the details, and it's really important for me to communicate certain things through the art as well that, I don't know, in a way that AI is just not capable of right now. But I also feel there are just certain skill sets or qualities that the human being has or that we have on a soul level that may not ever be able to reproduce through AI. We do use it for many things that help us save time, brainstorming, or sometimes communicating ideas. I've been actually starting to use this more with the deck that I'm creating with Anna right now. And sometimes it may be a little bit difficult to communicate in words what exactly I'm envisioning. So I might go use an AI generator just to generate a few images that help me communicate better what I'm envisioning. And then she translates that into the actual illustration that she completely hand draws. And there are other things too, but I definitely say, yeah, use it for anything that is just tedious to do for humans. That'll just end up saving you a lot of time, and then focus on the things that you're good at that really needs your input. And what else? I have also seen, again, Anna Babbage, who I'm working with, she's actually been experimenting with using AI to create elements for art that then she puts together in layers of different elements that she pieces together. It's like the old version of, would have been more like photo manipulation. It just helps to speed up the process as well, but she still puts a lot of intention into it, and she edits things that don't look good, and then you can actually create something really beautiful. But it's not as simple as just putting in a prompt and then expecting the AI to create a perfect image. And sometimes it might look good, but then other times it won't. So a lot more I could say, but that's it in a nutshell.
I love the point about communication with artists. I think that's such a sneaky little tip. If people didn't hear that one, I'm repeating it. Because I think, hey, what about those times where you're trying to describe, oh, I want it to look cool. You can't quite figure out the way you want the art to, that's the translation difficulty that would keep someone from art. So I love that plan. Nick.
I've done some stuff with, and I keep playing because I'm curious, right? And I'm watching the difference as stuff like Midjourney evolves, and then watching ChatGPT's art creation evolve, and their video generation thing is, it's called Saro or something, I forget what it's called. And then Grok, who is X's stuff. And they all generate images like to a penny now. It's so effortless. But I created some amazing images in ChatGPT a few months ago, and I haven't used any of them. I looked at them and they were like, to me, I was like, this is like $5,000 worth of creative if I'd have asked someone to do this for me. But they're all imperfect because you can't actually control what it does, right? So it's given me this thing that's incredibly amazing, but I would still need to pay someone to do it, to finish off the things that are missing. And how long is that going to be the case for? Because things are evolving so fast, right? And I thought, they've all each got strengths. ChatGPT has incredibly strong textual understanding. You can teach it so much about yourself, your business, and it makes corrections and stuff. And I dived back into Midjourney yesterday. I hadn't used it in a long time. I'm like, oh, yeah, the quality of what it creates is better because it's got a smarter engine, I think, but its understanding of the world is not as good. And it's just, this is like stepping stones. It's evolving, right? And I feel like I have strong opinions on this as a technologist, but I'm fascinated, but I'm also frustrated, but I'm also blown away. What a mashup of contradictory feelings. Like, this is hard, but it's only going to get better, and you won't know what's possible unless you try. and you won't know the boundaries, and you won't notice the progress. Honestly, this is the hardest thing. The admiration for Crystal and is like drawing a hard line, right? Because it's a hard line for now, right? It's not really a hard. You're not saying we will, because if you say we will never ever, you're creating this wall that you then eventually going to have to climb over at some point. And you look at it. You use Photoshop. When are you not using AI in Photoshop these days, right? The boundaries are blurring. You're just subtly using it. And you didn't even call the features aren't called AI anymore. It just does stuff that's photo manipulation that used to be Photoshop, right? It's
hard to tell, right? Even if we tried making a hard stance in the stand and said we will never ever, inevitably someone's going to use a little in their process and we're not going to be able to know. And so we don't want to be caught like the proud vegan at the steak place on Friday night. You know?
No, it's
for now we haven't done it.
And honestly, the quality, what is a quality deck is, and let's take the word deck out of it because that makes it less emotional for all of us. But what's a quality book? Look on Kindle. There's some right roll crap on Kindle, quite honestly, right? There's crap everywhere. There's awful stuff on Etsy. Who's judging? Because it's speaking to somebody. And I don't know how to answer that debate. I don't have a clear answer.
We're talking about the acquisition side, but it's a reality for all of us who are in the publishing business as well, that other AI material that is going forward from other places, whether it's POD or through other publishers or what have you, is going to start pulling sales away from other titles that may be more legitimate, right? Is going to flood the market with misinformation, frankly, because as all of us who have played with AI know, sometimes it's great, and sometimes it just absolutely makes things up. And as someone who wants to see correct information preserved, which should be a really hot topic in today's current culture, right? Misinformation has become so abounding. It's important to be preserving and readers, right? It's important to check what you're finding because some of these AI books are going to get turned out really, really fast on a dime when some topic suddenly becomes relevant and now you're searching for it and just bought a book full of garbage.
Right, no, it's so
information, right?
So true. As I said before, it doesn't argue with you. It'll write anything you tell it. And just because it writes it doesn't mean it's true, right? You still need a human. If it's important to your destiny, and like you said, a quick email, no one's going to bat an eyelid, right? But I've written stuff and thought stuff. Is that true? It's like I don't know. Where do I sit on that? It's so honestly, it's fascinating to feel that conflict internally. But I don't think you need to be sitting in it to feel that conflict, to recognize where the flaws are. And also to have the skills to even spot where AI is coming at you from. I said you could draw a hard line in the sand and then someone will determinedly try and get a deck published with you that's actually made with AI to prove the point, right? Mm-hmm. It's a crazy world, but that stuff is happening. And how do you deal with, let's take us to music, right? You can create music through AI, that probably is going to sell better than regular music because it's following trends and it's not creativity, but it's just mechanical. It's creating something that's going to meet a need at a certain point, right?
We used to call those pop stars. Yes.
Well, and there's the whole faceless channel on social media as a thing, right? So you don't need to turn up to be your channel. And then you've got these AI celebrities, which is pretty close to porn, I think, mostly, but it doesn't have to be. You can decide I don't want to be on camera and then create this 20, 30-year-old person of whatever gender you choose to do and say and act like you want. Is that good or bad?
And that impacts the reading industry too, right? We're talking publishing today, but I mean, I'm seeing so many AI readers out there that'll tell you your natal chart or read your cards for you. So for everyone who makes a living on reading cards, this impacts you on that level as well.
Exactly, right. And there's journal products that that will do a reading on your journal. You write something and it'll write something on top. I mean,
like Harry Potter, we know where that goes. Yes.
Yeah, but it's just
the Chamber of Secrets.
I love this. I also really think this is one of these things that I could do like a 2-hour workshop just on the impact of this alone. So I thought maybe I'll just throw out some other trends.
Yeah.